it started. BRIZER,
Right.
you're very welcome to this movie review of Margin Call from 2011. What's your initial impression of the film?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Twixt, for inviting me on. Good to be back again. We haven't done one of these in a while, so yeah, good to look at this one. I never actually heard of it before. You sent it, when you contacted me to say whether we'd look at this one. But I found it quite interesting, and it's basically giving you a picture of what happened back in 2008, which of course will linger in a lot of people's memories of a time when things got really bad for an awful lot of people, except for some of the people in this movie. It worked out very well for them. But yeah, it was an interesting time, and I kind of remember too when it all happened, and everything was going on swimmingly, wasn't it? It was a great time to be alive. There was money slushing around everywhere. People were buying houses and cars and swimming pools and jetting off to foreign spots for their luxury holidays and stuff. And then suddenly the carpet was pulled from beneath them, and we had an absolute calamity after that, with businesses closing, people's having their houses foreclosed on them, rapid unemployment, deflation rather than inflation, and basically the economy was in a bad state of affairs for a while. And I think it still hasn't improved. I think they just put a sticking plaster over it, and it's just carried on up to today. And I think we're going to probably see another type of situation like this happening. Well, it could be any time, really, couldn't it? I mean, you don't know, but it's not looking good out there either for the whole economy, So yeah, I thought it was a good film. I liked the acting in it. I thought there was good, the way it was centered just around in a 24-hour. Basically, it was an unnamed investment firm in New York in around that time of 2008 when the whole collapse happened, and centered around say 10 characters, really, the main characters in it. And it was like a 24 hours. I mean, where do you want to, will we start off from how it all kind of kicks off, or where do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'll just give some quick background. Mm-hmm. So the film was from 2011, and I've watched it, I don't know, 3 times. And I watched it 2 nights ago. And I was thinking to myself, it must have been fairly cheap to make this film, because, most of it's just in these office cubicles. And I found here that the budget for the film was $3.5 million, which is nothing.
That's very low.
That's in Hollywood, even in 2011. That is, when you think of the actors and actresses that are in this film. Well, the actors especially. Mm-hmm. So I'll just go through some of the cast. We have Kevin Spacey. He's playing. I guess he's like the third in command overall. He's like, I think he's like the manager of his floor, and he plays a guy called Sam Rogers, and it is an interesting character. He has a very sick dog, and we'll get into that as we go on. We have Jeremy Irons playing John Tull, and he's the big wheel or whatever. He's the one really calling the shots, and you only really will see him if there's an emergency, which happens in this film. And he comes in on a helicopter. We have Zachary Quinto playing Peter Sullivan, and he's the bright young graduate, whatever. I think he studied rocket science, but he got into trading and all that because he said he could make a lot more money doing that. Mm-hmm. So he's there for the money, and he's very smart, young fella. We have another guy, he's English, and he's like a team leader. It's Paul Bettany, and he plays Will Emerson. And I won't go through all of them. I'll just go through a few more. We have a very important character in the film called Eric Dale, and he gets sacked. We'll be getting into that in a minute. And he's played by Stanley Tucci. And yeah, 2 more characters I'll go through, or 3. We have Simon Baker playing Jared Cohen. Now, Cohen is actually the manager of the whole building. We have Demi Moore, and she plays, I think it's Sarah Roberts or something like that. And then we have finally Penn Badgley, and he plays Seth Bregman. And he's more or less, he's around the same age as the character Peter Sullivan. They work for the same team, and their fortunes are going to go in different directions as the movie progresses. So yeah, BRIZER, we'll get into it. It starts off, and I think it's very well written. The script is very well written, and they don't waste any time. We immediately see the office, and we see these women marching in, and they look like invaders. They're the human resource department or whatever, and they've come in to sack a lot of people, and that's how it starts off. So if you want to give us a bit of a background here, and I'll come in when you want to pass it over.
Yeah. So yeah, it starts off like that. You know, you're just in this general office situation, people sitting at their desks and their computers and whatever, and but people are looking around because you see these women coming in, and there's this particular young lady who comes in and is tapping people on the shoulder and saying, "Come out, would you like come along with us, please, sir?" You know, and obviously they go into the back room and they get their marching orders, and everyone's looking around wondering, am I going to be next? You know, and this HR manager comes up to the Peter Sullivan character, taps him on the shoulder and asks him, is he what's his name now?
Eric Dale.
Eric Dale, sorry. And he says, no, I'm not Eric Dale, that's my boss, I think he says, or and he's down the corridor a bit, So she says, oh, I'm sorry. So she walks on down and walks into his office, and he's not really expecting anything to happen to him either, and he's well, he's kind of sort of, I think he knows what's going on, but he's kind of a little bit surprised that she's in there. And again, so he's taken down to another office by security and goes into a room, and there's two other HR people there and pretty much giving his marching orders and saying, you got to go, but we're going to be a generous kind of offer for you. You'll keep your shares and your whatever healthcare options and blah blah blah. And the guy is obviously very taken aback by this, and he could see obviously he's very kind of disappointed and stuff, but because obviously he was a key player on all of this, so he's told to go back to his desk, clear out his desk, and basically leave, and that his phone would be cut off and all connection to the company are severed as of now. So he goes back to his office anyway, gathers up all his stuff, and the Will Emerson character comes into his office and apologizes, commiserates with him, and wasn't expecting that one, but so Eric Dale just kind of says, well, feck it, I'm gone. So, and he packs up everything, but of course he has this little hard drive with a lot of very important information on it. So he takes that with him, and then as he's walking down the corridor to get into the lift to go down to the go out to the building, he sees the Peter Sullivan guy and his colleague Seth Bregman, I think, isn't it? Seth Bregman. I've got the cast of characters there, who work under Eric Dale, and again they commiserate with him and weren't expecting that and all the rest of it. And just as he's getting into the lift, he hands him over the hard drive and says, "Take that, and you need to have a look at that work I've been looking at. You need to have a look at it." And then he says, "Be careful." Okay. And that was that, and then he goes down to the ground floor. He's outside and he's trying to make a phone call, and he finds out, of course, that his phone is disconnected, and he just throws it onto the ground and smashes it up, and off he goes. We don't see him then for quite a bit. And so I think from what I remember, then the Peter Sullivan guy kind of looks at this hard drive, wondering, okay, what's this all about? And but you know, the scene kind of continues with more people being kind of getting their marching orders. So I see a lot of people walking out with boxes and stuff like that. So there's a clear out going on in the office, right? So a lot of people have been let go. So obviously this is at a time when the markets were very volatile and nobody knew what was really happening. And but it wasn't good, and people were being let go. They were kind of reorganizing, major reorganizing going on. And not sure what happens then. I think it's doesn't your man Will Emerson goes into the Sam Rogers, who plays by Kevin Spacey, goes into his office, and he starts going on about his dog, that his dog is dying. And he's very upset about it. Obviously, he's very close to his dog and paying a huge amount of money every day just to try and keep him alive. And the Emerson guy says to him, well, you know, yeah, that's them all gone now, pretty much. You got to make an announcement or whatever, you know. So he kind of gets himself together and walks out into the office and does this clapping kind of thing, which is a bit... I've seen this in the corporate world. It's so annoying. Oh, jeez. You know, the clapping. Hey, you know, great guys, you know.
The pep talk.
Yeah. Pep talk, yeah. And he says, right, you know, you're here because you're the best and all this kind of stuff. And we have to do this clear out. So, you know, we got a new day and we got to start again, you know. So that's the first part. Have I left anything out? Can you remember?
Yeah, I'll just go back to HR and when they're speaking to Dale. You know, he has it in his head that, well, he had it in his head that they couldn't fire him because he works in risk management.
Risk analysis.
Yeah, so he presumed he was okay because you know it's all about risk and avoiding risk and whatever. So yeah, he was taken aback, but I really like that scene, and you know that the two women, the HR women, like the way they speak, they almost speak as if their words are from a formal email, you know. Yeah. And you know they've used those words over and over and over again. Yeah. No. And what any questions he has, they immediately have an answer for it. I do. So it's like he's snookered. Whatever he does, he's just completely snookered. And he even mentions that, you know, he's working on something that's very important for the company, and they immediately stop him and say, you know, whilst we, you know, we really appreciate your interest in the company, we have already made plans for that. So he's being told that, you know, he's redundant in all ways. You know, he's no longer useful. Yeah. And I think it's very telling that, for example, Will Emerson, like he comes in and says, oh, you know, you mentioned it already. He comes into his office or whatever. He comes to his desk and he says, you know, I really didn't think you'd be let go. Sorry, man. Sorry. And when, you know, when Eric Dale tries to tell him, you know, hey, I've been working on something, and immediately Will just kind of like, yeah, I've, you know, look, man, it's not your problem anymore. And you can see Dale, he knows who the genuine people are and who the fraudsters are, and he knows that Will Emerson's a bit of a fraudster, you know. Yeah. So, like, it just amazes me how you could work with someone for many, many years. They suddenly get the sack, and you don't really want to know them anymore. And that's the way Will Emerson treats Eric Dale. Now, you mentioned. Yeah, you mentioned Sullivan. Like he actually does feel sorry for Eric Dale. I think he looks upon him as a sort of mentor, the guy who trained him in. And he comes to offer his commiserations, and he hands him then the USP or whatever. And then Sullivan, he burns the midnight oil. They all go out to the pub, they go out drinking, having a great time. His colleagues who haven't been fired. But Sullivan it's like he's seen a problem, and he wants to find out more, and that's when he finds out that there's a serious problem. You could say on the horizon, but it's already passed them by in a way. They just haven't noticed it.
Yeah.
And just to get back as well, you mentioned Sam Rogers, his dog. When I watched this the first time, I was amazed that someone, in his case, he says he spends $1,000 a day to keep his dog alive. $1,000 a day. And I was thinking, right, so that's about 30 grand a month, you know. So that's the average American salary a month. The average yearly salary, American salary, in the confines of 1 month, spent on keeping a 15-year-old Labrador or whatever alive. You know, it seems that when people start earning the colossal sums that people like Sam Rogers earned in this, they start thinking that money can do anything, that, you know, it can keep a dog alive, you know. So just, you know, you have people who their needs are completely different from our needs. You know, if your dog is on the way out, and, you know, someone says to you, well, if you can spend $1,000 a day, you can keep your dog alive. I think you'll just say, look, you'll say to the vet, put the dog down. I can't afford that. But someone like Sam Rogers can keep his dog alive for a few more months by throwing money at the problem.
Yeah, and the other thing I got out of it was that you could see that this guy maybe had a kind of a conscience, you know what I mean, where he, the fact that he cared so much about his dog, you know, a lot of people are like that, you know, but, you know, they're pets, part of the family, and you want to do everything to kind of keep them alive, or if they're sick, you know, to get them better again. But then and I think he was a little bit upset seeing that, like, the staff going, but it was just that's the way it is, and get over it, you know. So there was a kind of side to him where he was a little bit of compassion there in him, I suppose, but business is business, you know.
Just to get back to Eric Dale being sacked. Like, I can't remember. He's something like, he's at least 18 years of service. And as you said, he's taken aback. He wasn't expecting it. And then at the very end of this little interview with HR, where they tell him, you know, your phone will no longer work once this meeting finishes. So everything's calculated. Once this meeting finishes, you're a persona non grata. And security, like, there's a guy from security standing there, and she says he will walk you to your desk. So you're being because you're no longer working there, you're considered a threat to the company. And you'll have security walking you to your desk, making sure you don't take anything extra or whatever. And then security will walk you out to the, you know, the door of the building. And after that, you're on your own. You know, we're not going to arrange any sort of transport or anything. You know, you're on your own. Your phone is gone. So it shows you how cold-blooded these big corporations can be. Like, they just treat people like crap, you know.
Yeah, and you can kind of see that through the whole movie as well. Like, yeah, you know, as we kind of go into it, but, you know, the big boss man as well, you know, he doesn't, all he's about is saving the company, and, you know, if that means throwing you guys under the bus, so be it. You know, that's how these, as I said, that's how these corporations work. Yeah, and I've seen it myself. You know, I've seen it not as bad as what we saw in this movie, but I've seen, you know, similar type of scenarios. You know, yeah, I'm kind of glad that I kind of went through all that myself in my own personal life, because just to witness it, you know, and it's not a nice environment, and the people that you think are your friends, the people that you're working with, like 8-9 hours a day, 5 a week, whatever it is, and you're good drinking buddies and whatever, and then at the end of it, that's it. They're gone out of your life, just like that.
Yeah, yeah. I should mention, BRIZER, that the name of the head HR woman is Lauren Bradberg. I just thought
Right.
I just thought that was an interesting surname to use for the top HR woman, Bratberg.
Bratberg. Why? What's I thought, I'm not sure.
Well, I just think of the word brat, you know, like.
Oh, Brat. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and she played that kind of HR. I've seen this in these HR managers, you know, just as cold, calculating. You know, that's it. You're out of this job, and you'll get what you're owed and whatever. 6 months salary or whatever, wasn't it? Half salary or something like that for 6 months, and then healthcare still going, but you know. But that's basically told as well that you know you got to behave yourself once you leave here.
Yeah,
because we can cut them off as well.
Exactly,
you know?
Exactly. Yeah. But even that's another thing. Like she says, you'll get 6 months severance, and I was thinking, oh, that's pretty good. And then she said at half your salary, so really it's 3 months severance.
3 months, yeah. But yeah, I know. It does sound good, isn't it? 6 months, yeah, but half, yeah.
Yeah, So it's really just
short change there a bit, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. One hand giveth, the other hand taketh away. You know, it's like
exactly.
Christ. But so we don't see Eric Dale for quite a bit. Then quite later on in the movie, but then as I said, the Sullivan guy goes to his computer and he stays late because he's obviously intrigued by what this Eric guy has found or what he's discovered. And all the other guys, as they go off to the bar and they're celebrating because they haven't lost their jobs. And so he's digging away, and then he comes across something, and he's going, "Holy crap! Okay." So he gets in touch with these bosses, which is the Will Emerson dude, and they're in some bar somewhere getting. Or no, not Will Emerson. His other colleague, Seth, isn't it? And he says, "I found something here on the computer, and I think we need to get in touch with get Will Emerson on. We need to talk with him." So they find him, and of course he's in the bar knocking back the booze, and they make contact, and they don't really know what's going on. They're half drunk anyway, so they're kind of like, what's happening here? So they go back anyway, and Sullivan shows them whatever it is on the computer. We don't know even what it is at this moment in time, but it obviously looks pretty significant. And suddenly they all sober up pretty quickly, you know? And holy crap! This is not looking good. So we thought things were kind of bad as it was, but now if this is true, because it's a kind of projection that he made, wasn't it? This. Eric Dale had made. He was. I suppose at risk, you're always projecting as to what may happen in the future. And of course, then they find out that it actually has happened, and it's a lot worse than what they think it is. So Emerson then tries to get a hold of Sam Rogers, who's on his way home. It's late at night. I think it's about 10 o'clock at night, and he's saying, "Well, I got some significant information. Well, can you just email it to me?" And it's not. You got to get over here. So he says, "Okay." Reluctantly, he goes back. But he goes back anyway, and he sees it as well. And suddenly, it's all hands on deck now. And I'm not sure. Am I missing anything there? Is there anything else that that's happened?
Oh yeah,
I think it's kind of in and around that, but and then it kind of the big boys start coming in. Then suddenly, loads of phone calls are made, and the big guys, the next level up, are called in. And even though it's late at night, we literally got an emergency on our hands here.
Yeah. And Will says to Rogers on the phone, he's telling him to come in, and Rogers, you know, there's no way Rogers wants to go back in there after the day he's had, you know, the long day. Mm-hmm. His pep talks. He doesn't like his pep talks. As you said, there is some humanity in Sam Rogers, but there's not enough. We'll find out later. There's just not enough humanity in him. But Will is like saying, he's trying to explain it to him. And this is something else, BRIZER, I noticed in this film, that you've got all these hierarchies, all these chains of command, and nobody seems to know what the other person is doing.
Yeah.
And they can't even communicate because their jobs are so specific that one job is like one language, and then another job is a different language, and it's very difficult for them to explain problems, etc. So even when Sullivan is explaining to Will Emerson the problem, Will Emerson, who's his boss, says to him, just break it down for me. It's like,
keep it simple.
Give me the nuts and bolts. Give me the nuts and
bolts.
bolts.
I think he's a bit drunk as well, so he's kind of trying to get his head around this, and he says, just break it down easy for me because I'm kind of all over the place here.
But I get the feeling that because in his position, he wouldn't know what all the guys under him are doing exactly. He'll have an overall view, but he won't know the specifics. He can't. He wouldn't have the time to. And it's the same when Sam Rogers arrives. He's something similar. He's like, okay, break it down for me, And then when the top guy comes, he even needs it broken down for him. And he even says to Sullivan, when he gets Sullivan to explain to him the problem, he said, speak to me as though I were a small child or a dog. And then he says, I didn't get here with brains or by brains, something like that. So he's obviously from a very privileged background. And I got this kind of Rothschild vibe off the top guy, But anyway, so Will Emerson says, he's trying to explain it to him, and Sam Rogers, this is on the phone, Rogers says, email it to me. And then Emerson says, I don't think that is a good idea. And immediately Sam is like, I'm on my way. So he knows, because they can't email this. This has to all be done verbally, in a closed meeting room, because if this gets out,
he had to go back. He didn't want to, but he knew he had to.
Yeah, it was like the code.
Even though his dog was sick and all that, I think he just wanted to go home and tend to that. But once he said, "Oh, I can't email to you. This is you got to get in here," So he knew straight away. So the next thing we know is that there's a phone calls obviously have been made, and they're all still in the office type of thing, and they're all led into another meeting room, and there's all these other people who we don't know, we haven't seen up to now. And there's this character, this Seth Cohen, interesting name there, Cohen, but anyway, who looks like he's the main boss in the building or whatever. I'm not sure what his position is, but obviously he's pretty important. And then you've got Demi Moore, who is she's some kind she works in the risk analysis as well, I think. And then there's another guy with him, an Indian type guy. I'm just looking at the names here. Asif Mandvi, that's the actor's name. Ramesh Shah. And there's a few other people who don't actually say anything, but they're there. And again, it's like the Jared Cohen guy is he doesn't know what's going on either. He knows something bad is happening, but again, because of those levels of people not knowing what the person beneath them are doing, he has to have it all explained to him as well, what's happening, And he doesn't know who these people are, the Peter Sullivan guy and the Seth guy as well. They don't know who are these guys, who are these plebs, And they're just explained that that the Eric Dale guy was let go, and but he gave him information that Peter Sullivan looked at, and it's pretty deep, pretty bad, So I think he kind of gets the picture then, and it's I'm not quite sure. Do you want to fill in after that, because I think there was a lot of talking about what do we do now kind of thing. It's
because they have
nobody was really just sure. They knew it was really bad, but who's going to make a decision? What happens next?
Yeah, Yeah, they weren't sure how to proceed. Even the top brass weren't sure. And this thing with your man, what's his name again? Oh yeah, Eric Dale. Like, that's a serious problem for them, because he's the one who more or less, he's one of the only. I suppose him and Sullivan understands it, but Dale has the experience, and he's really researched this, so he's the man they need.
Yeah, and they want to get him, and they can't.
And they want to get him, but it's because of their own corporate policy of for example, disconnecting the mobile phone as soon as he steps out of the building. And you can see they're all really pissed off when they ask, why can't we find this guy? And they're like, he was let go today, and his phone was cut off. And you can see the management; they don't even know anything. Like Sam Rogers doesn't know anything about this. He seems surprised when he hears this. The same with John Tull, the very, very top guy, when he arrives on his helicopter. And as well as that, then you have Jared Cohen. He seems surprised by this as well, that they don't even know the policy, wherein when someone is made redundant, their phone is immediately disconnected. And this policy could sink the company if they can't find Eric Dale.
Yeah, and, so there's Demi Moore as well, who I think is higher up than Eric Dale, right? She's also in the risk analysis as well. She was very surprised, like what was going on there. But I think your man Will Emerson had his home phone number and tried calling him, and called his wife, but he wasn't home. So we're obviously thinking, he's just gone out and drink, drown his sorrows, which is, you can understand, I suppose. But of course he just leaves a message to call them as soon as he gets in, whatever, But that doesn't happen, though. We don't hear from him at all. So it's all about getting Eric Dale back in, and we're trying to find him, and that takes a while before they actually do find him.
Yeah, and they have to change. They have to change tactics as well, BRIZER, because the initial idea is that they could send security around to his house to try and convince him, to come back to the company. And they realized that that's the worst thing they could do, because Dale will be extremely stubborn. He's very bitter. So they decide a more personal approach is needed. So they send Will Emerson and I think Seth Bregman to his house. And that's where Dale explains that he was once an engineer, and he helped design this bridge.
That's right. Yeah.
And he was going through all the calculations, how many hours a day were saved for people driving, that they didn't have to drive all this way. They could just cross the bridge. And then he worked out how many miles a year, how much time it saved.
Down to the last little mileage, wasn't it? Down to the last little detail. He had it down to a T. Yeah. How he worked it all out, and he was able to just quote off these numbers like as if he had a little mini computer in his brain that was just spitting out these numbers,
Yeah, and he was very proud. You could see he was very passionate about the idea that he designed a bridge.
He designed that, yeah.
And then he obviously decided to go for the money as well. So he left a job that he liked, and he entered the monster.
Yeah, and he came back into the beast again.
Yeah. What's this? Is it in The Godfather? Every time I try and get out, they pull me back in.
That's it.
So.
But that happens later on in the movie. There's a few other things before, because they've been trying to find them and they can't find them. They went to a bar. The two guys, the younger guys, Sullivan and Seth Bregman, go looking for him in a bar that he would think that he would go to, because they obviously all went there in the past, and it was probably his favorite place to go. And I think it was a strip joint or something, wasn't it? Or certainly ladies dancing on the bar counter anyway.
Yeah, it looked like a fancy Hooters, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. And he obviously wasn't there, so where to now, And I don't think they knew where he lived, or at least I don't think they did. So they went back, so look on that. And then there was a scene when they were outside. They were obviously up very high in the building, and they're outside and they're looking down, isn't there? And they're all talking about their careers, and the two young guys asked Will Emerson, like, how much did he earn in the last year? And it's, you know, he was obviously doing very well for himself, you know. I think it was what, did you make $2.5 million last year? And he said, yeah. And, you know, how do you spend it all? And he says, oh, it goes quite quickly, you know, $2.5 million in a year, not over a lifetime, in a year. And of course, he ends up saying, like, the tax man takes a lot of it, obviously. Of course, he always gets his cut. And then his mortgage, obviously, he's got a big house somewhere or a big apartment somewhere in Fifth Avenue or something. Sends over a good chunk to his parents, and then he spends about 75 grand on restaurants, spent 150 grand on a car, about 50 grand on clothes, and he puts about 400 away for a rainy day or something like that. I'm just looking at I have the quote here from this.
Yeah, he sent money to his parents as well.
He sent his money to his parents. Yeah, 150 grand to his parents. His parents are doing all right out of this, so you know, forgetting. And then he says, I spend $76,520 on hookers, booze, and dancers, but mainly hookers. 76.5. He says, I was a little shocked initially, but then I realized I could claim most of it back as entertainment. It's true. You know.
Yeah. That's how
this is the word. Yeah, this
operate. Yeah,
that's it. You know, they dangle that carrot. You know, all the nice stuff, the bling. You know, there you have it, guys. You get out there and do what we tell you to do, and all this is waiting for you. You know.
Yeah, it's a big carrot, but there's also a very big stick if you don't toe the line. You know.
Yeah.
Like they'll cut you off completely and destroy you. So, I guess that's how it is in hell. You know, when you're negotiating with the devil.
Yeah,
he'll promise you everything, and if you don't, you know, you're going to get punished severely. But yeah, that guy Emerson, Will Emerson, I was surprised that he could quote how much he'd spent on hookers, but I guess he could, because, as you said, he was going to get it back by, you know.
Oh yeah, he has his expense account. Yeah, he has his
Yeah.
expense account, so he's got all the receipts and he adds them all up and sticks it all in, gets that back.
Yeah.
Entertainment. All right. That's nice, isn't it?
I don't know. Is it going too far ahead if I mention when they're on the top of the building? We might forget it.
Did we?
Go ahead.
Was there something before that? Because I mean, there was all the stuff going on in the boardroom with the next level management, trying to figure out what to do, and they tried to, you know, they send the two guys out looking for I keep forgetting his name, Eric Dale, and they can't find him, and so there's obviously lots of phone calls have been made, and so I think the next scene is when they're on the top of the skyscraper, looking over the edge, and talking about stuff like this. And I think there's a quote there that Will Emerson said. You know, he's looking over the edge, and he obviously gets up on the railing. You know, and they're going, "Oh man, watch yourself," you know. And he says, you know, the feeling that people experience when they stand on the edge like this isn't the fear of falling; it's the fear that they may jump. You know.
Yeah.
So
the other two try and convince him not to do anything.
Yeah, no, he was like he was just. I think he was still drunk a bit, you know, and he had a cigarette in his mouth, or it could have been a joint. I don't know. It looked like a cigarette, maybe. I don't know. But he was. I think he was just pretending that he was going to do something, but he didn't, you know. And then the next thing we see the helicopter coming in, and said, "Oh, here's the big boys. They're coming in." So I think that's the next stage. I think, isn't it? Or
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there's lots of narratives going on between that, but I think it's just the whole the build up to all of this, and as I said, the Cohen guy and all these the Demi Moore characters are like, they don't know what to actually do just yet. So they said, well, we got to call the big guys in. We got to bring them in because we can't make a decision here. So then we see the next thing, the helicopter landing, and everyone's called into this big conference room, and you can see that this is important. Like, so all the people that were involved are here. And then the next minute, the Jeremy Irons character, which is John Told, walks in, and it's kind of posh kind of English guy, and I have to say, because I think Jeremy Irons lives in Cork, that. I kind of, do you kind of detect a slight Irish accent there when he was speaking?
I didn't. No, I didn't.
Yeah, I kind of got a little twang there from here, and I was just wondering, because he's been living here for quite a long time now, so he's obviously picked up a kind of an accent maybe. But he still had that, you could tell that he was definitely like English from a very high upper class type of family,
Yeah. But he could have that accent as well, the kind of globalist accent where they've just since childhood been living in different countries, and they've had a posh education. Just to say, there's a good quote here, BRIZER, from Jared Cohen, and this is before they go in to that meeting room, to meet the head honcho and all that. And Cohen, he's telling the other guys, especially the young fellas, he says, just one piece of advice to everyone here before we go in there. This could get a bit ugly, but whatever you do, just tell the truth. Don't try to change a word of it. No sugarcoating. No one here is smart enough, including the rocket scientist. So it's a very serious moment. And all the, these companies and how people, speak to each other, it involves a lot of pretense, a lot of fakeness, whatever. But they have to be very straight from here on in if they're gonna save the company. So.
Yeah. So anyway, he walks in, and everyone's like, "Oh, there he is," I'm sure a lot of them haven't even seen this guy before, They probably heard of him, but they never met him or talked with him, So he kind of sits down, and again, as you said, you brought up earlier on, where he says, "Talk to me like as you would to a young child or a golden retriever," and then he says, "It wasn't brains that brought me here, I assure you that." So obviously, this guy was handed a silver platter, from daddy, and granddaddy before that, All he has to do is make sure that the business runs successfully, and that's why he hires and fires at will, So he sits down, and so I think, does he address Kevin Spacey character first, like Sam Rogers first, or is Sam Rogers says, "Well, you better speak to Peter Sullivan here"? I think it goes like that.
Yeah, he brings Sam out at the end. He says, "Sam, I want to speak to you in private." So he doesn't want the others to hear what he's got to say to Sam.
Yeah. But I think the Peter Sullivan guy though then gets up and basically explains that we're up shit creek without a paddle, right? In layman's term, which is what I think your man John Tull wants to hear, and he also wants to know what's happened. And they basically said they've over leveraged on their mortgage-backed securities, which was what all that was about back in 2008. The big scam involving that,
subprime, wasn't it?
Subprime mortgages, yeah, and they were selling these things in packages and selling them on securitization, it's called, and I know a bit about that because I was looking into that from my research, what I was going through.
Wasn't there a thing back then, BRIZER, before the crash, that banks would give you a mortgage even if you had nothing in collateral?
Yeah.
Like absolutely nothing. Even if you were on the dole.
Yeah.
They would offer you. Now it's changed now. Like last I heard, people need like 30%.
Oh yeah.
It's completely changed.
Completely changed now. I mean, you can't. It's impossible now for young people to get on the property ladder now. But back then, you could quite easily, But the thing is, the interest rates were far higher with these subprime guys, you know. So they make a fortune on this. And because when they securitize and sell it on, so if a company owns a load of mortgages, say a bank, right, just has a load of mortgages, kind of maybe distressed mortgages, and they want to pass it on. So they'll sell it on for lower than what they're worth, but they'll still get back what they want, what they, you know, because again, you got to remember, banks don't lend anything, really. They don't. They just facilitate credit. It's all numbers on a computer screen. The banks don't lose out. They just, you know, on a signature, they're able, you know, when you go and sign a mortgage note or a mortgage contract, they convert that into gills and bonds, and sell it out into the market, which is like currency, right? But it's in the banking world, right? And there's fortunes being made out of this, and they sell it on and repackage it and sell it on and all down the line, and everyone makes something all the way down the line. It's incredible how they do it. And not only that, they also insure themselves against a mortgage default. Okay, after, I think it's 3 months, but it might be 6, I'm not quite sure now. So if a mortgage goes into default for 6 months, they can then claim on the insurance and get the full value of that mortgage back. And then after that, they can come after and get the house. Win-win-win for the banks.
Yeah. Too big to fail, BRIZER. Too big to fail.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They'll throw a few of the banks under the bus just to show that you know, we're doing something about this. But oh man, what a time that was. I mean, fraud. I mean, talk about fraud. Unreal.
We never hear much, though. Even now, we never hear much about white-collar crime.
No.
I never hear anything. I never hear about some...
Well, it's coming out now. It's rearing its ugly head again because here in Ireland, because of all these vulture funds that are in Ireland, they're acting illegally here. Even the master of the High Court, who's a very learned man, because I've actually been in his court and I listened to him. He knows what's going on. Doesn't like what he sees either. He's kind of like a bit of a black sheep, but then, you know, he's in the system, so he can't say too much, but he does put it out there. And he says that these vulture funds are using like what they call fraudulent misrepresentation. In other words, they're fronting up as that they're legitimate companies, but they're not. All they are is debt collectors. That's all they are. Right? They haven't, and they're operating though as if they're a financial institution that can lend and borrow money and whatever. And they don't. And so the third-party interlopers is what they are, and they have an operating license which was obtained by fraudulent means. So it's rearing its ugly head. So the vulture funds are in trouble now because people have cottoned on to this. He only made that announcement when was it, back in December, I think. And it's causing a major stir. You're not hearing about it in the media, of course. You never hear about it in the media. But I've been watching this a bit, and it'll be interesting to see where that all goes. I believe a lot of people have put in, have gone to the cops and pretty much put in a complaint, but a kind of like saying that like there's a crime committed here and it's fraud, you know, and you need to investigate. And they got the pulse numbers back, which means that the cops now have to investigate it. Whether anything will happen, of course, is another story, but you know how it is. Here with the old Gardaí, Síochána in Ireland, they're not the most reliable.
I've heard terrible things about the vulture funds, and it seems they're almost in the business of trying to push people to suicide, because I heard the harassment is 24/7. They're very like they're very dirty in their tactics and all that. And like I've heard that, you know, properties that were worth maybe 400 grand were sold by the bank for about 7 or 8 grand to a vulture fund. And yeah, it's a very, very nasty business. And we'll actually we'll get into it.
Yeah, we can kind of talk about after we finish the movie, because it kind of ties up. Like we can kind of see what's happening now, and you know, tie it into what happened in this movie, because I think this movie does give you a good idea of what was going on back then. You know, and that's interesting that Hollywood would come out and do something like that. And you know, it's funny, like, I never heard of this film before until you told me about it. The only other one I knew that dealt with a similar thing was a film called The Big Short. Brad Pitt was in that one, and a couple of other well-known actors. Christian Bale, is it? Is that his name? Or Christian? He's a Welsh actor, but he's I think he's quite well known. There's a few other big names in it, right? And again, it was a well-made film, and in that film they kind of showed you, like, from when all the banks were deregulated in the late 90s, it literally became the Wild West. The financial system became the Wild West, and anything goes, okay? And it basically turned into a big casino where people were just making bets on futures, the futures market. That's just betting on a horse, like, that might win a race in 5 years' time. That's all that is. Derivatives markets and all this kind of stuff. And then it leads up to the 2008, and the whole thing just collapses. So it's they leave out a couple of things in The Big Short, like, because this was all sanctioned by the Federal Reserve, all the central banks, the Federal Reserve in America, Bank of England, the UK, European Central Bank, all of them. They were all involved in this, but they didn't mention that in The Big Short. But it's still a good film to kind of give you, for people who really want to understand what happened back then. They can see, like, what this was about. This was unreal how they got away with this, and most of them got bailed out, which is absolutely incredible, by the taxman, by the taxpayer.
Yeah, it just shows you, like, the free market isn't so free after all.
No, exactly. And then, of course, obviously the knock-on effects of that, because then it affects the economy and jobs, and people aren't earning anymore, so they have taken out big mortgages now, suddenly can't afford to pay them back. And then, so the next thing, they're in courts and having their houses taken from them. And I noticed, like, in Ireland, like, things change in Ireland, and a certain friend of ours, Mr. Alan Shatter, he's a certain origin that he comes from. He brought in a law back in, I think it was when Fine Gael got into power, I think it was 2010. They said, oh, they're going to fix everything, and we're going to get this all sorted out, the mess that Fianna Fáil left behind, And they made it worse. In fact, they brought in the vulture funds, okay? But Alan Shatter brought in a law that made it a lot easier for banks to evict people from their homes. Because before that, it was extremely difficult. If someone fell into arrears, all you had to do was call the bank and say, going through a difficult time right now. And the bank would say, well, give us what you can afford. And people would pay that, right? Whatever it is. And then when things get better, pay it back then, and the mortgage will just be extended on for a few more years, type of thing. But you're never thrown out of your home. Very, very rarely will that happen. When Shatter came in, he changed all that. And basically, if you went into a little bit of arrears, the bank could come and just take everything. Thanks, Mr. Shatter. That's one of the, and of course we know what he did with the open borders as well. So, that guy was put in there to destroy this country, basically. He kicked all that off,
Yeah. It should be said, BRIZER, actually, that, that was a pivotal year, 2011. 2010, 2011, and I remember at the time, you had, you probably remember it, there was a big problem with, I don't know, is it still operating, AIB Bank? Some guy, he must have owed a lot of money, and he was obviously in negative equity, as were so many people.
Yeah.
And he drove a cement lorry or something right up to
No,
the city centre.
That was the Anglo-Irish Bank.
Yeah, AIB, and he parked it right in front, and he had something. I saw it at the time. I was in the city centre that morning. It had toxic bank or something on the side of the. I don't know, was it a cement truck or something like that?
Yeah, it wasn't AIB. That's one of the high street banks, but they were up to their necks in this too. This is Anglo-Irish Bank, which actually reminds me of this particular company.
What's the difference? Sorry, BRIZER. What's the difference between AIB and Allied Irish Bank?
No, Allied Irish Bank. That's what AIB is. It stands for Allied Irish Bank. But then you had Anglo-Irish Bank, which was not a high street bank. It was like an investment bank.
Right.
And they were up to all sorts of dodgy deals, and that's what kind of reminded me watching this movie that this is what. It's the type of company that we were seeing here, like what Anglo-Irish were going through at that time. and they were up to their necks, and they knew it, and they fell, obviously, not like this company, but Anglo-Irish were eventually thrown under the bus. And the guy who was running it, Sean Fitzpatrick was his name. I think he was brought up in court and all that, but he got away with it,
Right.
Damage
but
that
AIB,
man,
that
AIB, yeah, that's
one
one of the main banks in Ireland at the moment. You have AIB, Bank of Ireland, and I think Permanent TSB, Ulster Bank. That's the main ones, but they're the
Ulster Bank are
gone. Ulster Bank are gone, actually, yeah. So there's only 3 now, yeah, that's right. And there's one or two building societies left, but that's about it. And so AIB they're part of the Rothschild Bank group of banking, by the way, so our banking group. So they're one of the main. Yeah, AIB got bailed out too, I think, as well. So they were up to their necks. They were all at it, They were all at it. And not just in Ireland, in the UK or across Europe, in America, North America, in the Western world in general.
Yeah, it happened everywhere.
They were all at it, yeah, and in Asia, and Japan, and all these other places too.
And they all got bailed out, practically, all of them. As you said, a few minions, a few small banks were kind of thrown to the wolves, but the big guys generally were too big to fail, and they continued.
They continued, yeah. And even like, I was talking to you how all these mortgages were insured. And AIG, you've heard of AIG, AIB. AIG is the big American insurance group, it's called. The biggest insurance company in the world at the time. I don't know if it still is, but it's still around, still there. And they were getting all these claims, these insurance claims, because of mortgages going into default, and they couldn't pay out. So they went to George W. Bush and said, "Can you bail us out, please?" They were bailed out. So insurance was brought into it as well. And that was for billions, trillions. I don't know what the number is. Lots of zeros anyway. So, it's a complete mess. So I think that what happened back then. But again, I think it was by design. The very top guys knew exactly what they were doing.
But that's what I was going to say to you as well, BRIZER, about it being a pivotal year, because that's when the IMF came to Dublin, and you remember you'd see footage on the news, and you'd see Lenihan, wasn't it? He was Minister of Finance, and he was dying at the time. He had cancer. And he was, they were escorting these guys around Dublin city centre, and you got the feeling, like just by the expressions on the Irish lads' faces, that they were more or less handing over government policy to internationalists, and that Irish men would no longer be calling the shots in Ireland. That was the message I got when I watched that.
Yeah. That's the day you could say our sovereignty died, really.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You could say the EU took that as well, but when the IMF came in and said, right, we're running your financial affairs now, we're in charge. And what reminded me of those pictures, I remember, it reminded me of those HR people in the movie walking in, all stern-faced. We're the bosses now.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, it was. I think could have been a year later. I think it was the Irish budget or something like that, or projections or whatever. It was discussed in the German Parliament before it was discussed in the Irish Parliament.
Yeah.
And that spoke volumes, Irish finances were being discussed first of all in Germany, and then in Ireland.
Yeah. Yeah, God, what a time that was. Jesus, I remember it because it affected me, and in a big way. And in some ways, you think how it affected me. Like I lost my job, right? I had a good job. I was doing well. But I thought, I was around that time too. I was getting quite disillusioned with it all too, because I didn't like the whole corporate mindset. And I think my so-called bosses didn't kind of like my kind of attitude in a way, But I just kept doing it because, I needed a job, I had a mortgage, so I just kind of kept at it. But I changed companies then, and that was, it was in 2008. Was it just before all of this kind of happened? And then the company that I went to started letting people go, and because I was last in, I was first out. And that was around the time as well that my wife died as well, and so that was affecting me personally. I wasn't doing well at the job either. I was all over the place, So that they used that as kind of even though they didn't say it, but like, we don't need this guy now, So that was me out in the street, bit like Eric Dale.
I was gonna, sorry to hear about your wife. I was gonna say that. Did they also? Did you have a company phone? And
I didn't have a company phone. No.
Right.
No, I didn't have any of that. But I was brought up to see the boss man just before lunchtime, and I didn't expect this. Again, I didn't expect it, and I walked in and said, "Oh, I'm gonna have to let you go. Make cutbacks now," and they're doing it. It was a Swiss company. It was a shipping company. Quite big, very international, and they're letting go people, which they were. I had heard that they were letting people go anyway. And then, of course, well, you were last in, so we're going to have to let you go, And then when I came back down to the office, they said you can stay till the end of the day if you want, and you'll get your salaries and all, whatever's due to you, all that stuff. Came back down, everyone in the office was gone. They all fecked off to early lunch, so they fucking knew.
They'd been briefed. I was in a company where something similar happened as well. It was like half the staff were laid off, and it was announced all of a sudden. And I was out sick the day that, I didn't get the chop, but I remember afterwards, manager telling me how he said. He was trying to explain to me that from now on, we'd be in a stronger position. And I was thinking, you've just laid off 50% of the staff. If you think we're going to be in a stronger position,
But you have to work out 5 times as hard.
Exactly. Yeah.
Take work home with you and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. Not that I would.
No.
But I remember he said something to me. I don't know. Was it about a month later? Something come up about the layoffs. And he said to me that he said it was last in, first out, and he said, along with a few exceptions.
All right. Okay.
So there were a few people who
they really wanted.
He considered to be taking the piss more or less, and it was his chance to sack them and to do it in a nice way. Just throw them into a big list and get rid of them. But it's very strange when you're working with these guys. You're going, going out. Maybe you're going for drinks. You're going for coffee. You're having chats. You're having a laugh with them.
Yeah, I know. And like some of them came to my wife's funeral and everything. They came to my funeral and everything. And I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that. But then as soon as I was gone, like that was it. I haven't heard anything from any of them since. Not one.
Yeah.
It's just like you're just cut off. Bing, that's it.
Yeah, I think that there's some sort of subconscious element that they look down on you because you were let go and they weren't, which means they're better than you are. I'm not saying they reasoned this into speech or anything, but it must be somewhere there at the back of the mind.
Yeah,
BRIZER just wasn't as good as we are. So
exactly. But I never really got a chance. So just to figure, I never got a chance to get my foot under the door there really. And then my wife died was a major thing. I was off for 3 months because of that. Then when I went back, I couldn't get it together really, and I was messing up. I have to blame myself a bit on this too because I wasn't. My mind wasn't on it at all. So, but I still wasn't expected to be let go. I thought, I don't think I'd still done my 6 month probation. You do 6 months to show what you're about. I still hadn't really done that.
Right.
I thought they would at least keep me on for 6 months, but that didn't happen. So anyway, we'll get back to the old movie again. So, they're in the boardroom anyway. All the big wigs are there, And basically, Peter Sullivan guy says, "Okay, we're up shit creek here. That's it." And what does he call it? It's a good quote that John Tult comes out with.
Is this about the music, Brizer? Is it?
It's with the music, yeah.
Yeah, I might.
But he
quote
also
it here.
says, yeah. Go on, you could quote it, yeah.
No, I just have something here. He says, so he's speaking to Peter, and Peter Sullivan's explaining, the dire straits they're in, and John Tull says, "Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Sullivan. Do you want to know what I'm sitting here in this chair with you all? Why I get the big bucks, so to speak?" And Peter says, "Yes." And he says, "I'm here for one reason, and one reason only." And it's actually a very good part of the film. He says, "I'm here to guess what the music is going to do in a week, month, a year from now. That's it, nothing more. And I'm afraid, standing here tonight," and I think he's standing at the window looking out. He says, he says, "Standing here tonight, that I don't hear a thing, just silence." And you can see like everyone at the meeting, like they're all dropping their heads.
Yeah, and then before that he says, he's talking to Peter again, he says, "So what you're telling me is that the music is about to stop and we're going to be left holding the biggest bag of odorous excrement ever assembled in the history of capitalism."
Yeah,
Peter says, "Sir, I'm not sure if I put it that way, but let me clarify using your analogy. What this model shows is the music, so to speak, just slowing. If the music were to stop, as you put it, then this model wouldn't even be close to that scenario, it would be considerably worse." And then he goes on then from what you said,
Yeah, that's another thing. That's another thing, Brizer. The fact he didn't use the word shit. He'd be too kind of high up, too posh to use the word shit. He'd use something like odorous excrement instead.
Yes, yeah. And that's exactly what it was. They were holding the biggest bag of odorous, smelliest excrement ever in the history of capitalism. Yeah, that's what these guys were up to.
And Brizer, they were ready to sell it off.
Worthless.
to people like us. The people like us.
Worthless pieces of paper, really. That's all they were.
Yeah.
Just
toilet paper would be worth more.
Yeah. Just all these things that were just designed into packages and tranches, as they call them. Just sell them all off. There'll be a buyer out there. So some gullible idiot will buy this shit off us. So let's do it.
And he says, because you mentioned there earlier, Brizer, that John Tull, he actually says something to Sam Rogers in this, big meeting, and he does. He says, "Sam, I don't think you seem to understand what your boy down here just said. If I made you, how would you do it?" So I think Sam is saying he doesn't want to proceed with any sort of scam. But John Tull is saying, just tell me how you would do it. So he's trying to go at him from a hypothetical angle, and Sam, you can see he's a consummate professional. Even though he hates what he does, he's very good at it. And he says, he just answers him like this. He says, "You bring the traders in for their normal 6:30 meeting, and you be honest with them. They're going to know it's the end either way. So you'd have to throw them a bone, and a pretty big one. You'd have to come out of the gate storming. 40% done by 10:15, and 70% of your positions need to be gone by 11, because by lunch the word will be out. No swaps, no nothing, and by 2 o'clock you'll be getting 65 cents on the dollar if you're lucky, and the feds will be in here looking up your ass and trying to slow us down." So Sam, this is why someone like Sam Rogers, the guy whose dog is at death's door, this is why he will never be sacked, because he's the best. He's practically the best employee that John Tull has, and Tull knows it.
And he's been 35 years or something.
Could be closer to 40. Yeah, he's
got the track record.
Exactly.
And so they basically say, right, we're just going to. Oh, and I think your man Will Emerson, I think, alluded to it as well. He says, "Watch, they're going to sell all this off." And I think, doesn't Sam Rogers say, I think some before that somewhere, he says, like, we buy and we sell. If we start just selling, no, that's not going to work out too well, you know. People are going to know what's going on. But he says, well, just sell anyway, and we'll take this hit. We'll just get rid of all this toxic crap that we have, clear the decks, so to speak, and we start again, you know. And to hell with the economy, to hell with people's lives, to hell with all the employees that we had here. You know, we can get rid of them, pay them off, whatever. That was it.
Yeah.
That's what it came down to, you know.
I got the feeling, Brizer, that this John Told, I get the feeling he owns about 25 different big corporations, and this is like, for him, this is just one problem that he's gonna solve, and then he'll get back to his other 24 companies once, you know, this one will be destroyed, but it doesn't really matter in the general scheme of things. He's not going to lose. He's not going to lose.
Yeah. So so it's pretty much agreed then that they're going to, as I said, sell everything off, all hands on deck, everyone in. They got their meetings, they got their instruction, they go to the big meeting, all the staff. And you got to sell to everybody, even your mother, they said, you know, sell whoever's buying, you sell, and just get this stuff off our books, basically, right? And so they all get to it, and they're all selling away. You see your man Will Emerson calling up all his colleagues. I got a deal for you here. I'll give you this, give you that, and there's a bit of bargaining going on. But they manage to sell everything off, and they basically save the corporation. And John Tult obviously is very happy, and Sam Rogers is like, yeah, well, we've done it again, type of thing, you know. Like, but he's obviously thinking, my God, the damage that this is going to do, you know. But again, his mind as well, that's business, isn't it? So
that's another thing, Brizer. You know, they have these non-disclosures. So in the case of Sam, as far as I know, he has a son who works. I think he works on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And he possibly works for one of those companies that's going to buy up this crap, you know. And you know, he's going to swindle his own son in a way, not directly, but indirectly. He's certainly going to do it, because later on, I think when he's speaking to his wife, he asks, "Is the son okay?" And I think she says, you know, they had a load of layoffs, but fortunately he'll still be working there or something. So what he's doing is affecting the next generation of his family.
Yeah. He knows the consequences, obviously, you know. You know, deep down, I don't think he likes it, but he's just a hard-nosed businessman, and he kind of goes along with it. Doesn't like what he's doing. Remember, himself and Peter Sullivan were outside the building having a coffee or something, and they both kind of knew that this is it. It's sink or swim now, you know. And they neither of them really liked what they had to do here, but they did it, you know. Obviously, you know, the Peter Sullivan guy didn't know whether he was going to be sacked or not. But, Sam Rogers knew he wouldn't be. Also, the Demi Moore, what was her name again? I'm trying to get her up.
It was
Sarah Robertson. Yeah, she thought she was going to get the hatchet. Well, she did get the hatchet, but she was handsomely paid off. So so all the employees got huge kind of bonuses, right? They were told for whatever amount of sales you get, you'll get what, a million or something, was it?
I think it was like,
or was it? Or was
it could have been $1 million or $1.5 million if they met their targets. If the team sold off something like, I don't know, is it 65% of the assets, they get an extra $1 million onto that.
Yeah.
So the motive, you know, as we said earlier, there are big carrots here, very big carrots, and you're going to earn enough money in one day. That's possibly like 2 or 3 years working in that job, and that to me, it sounds criminal. But what even sounds more criminal is the fact that Dale and Robertson, Dale eventually they get him back, but now they don't need his expertise. They just need him to shut the fuck up.
That's all, yeah.
So
they
have
eventually
to
find them. They eventually find them.
They're practically incarcerated.
Yeah.
While the fire sale is on, they're incarcerated, but they're being paid. In his case, he's being paid something like 150 grand an hour.
Yes.
So let's say that's 7 hours or something, And it was mentioned earlier when Emerson visited him and was sitting on the steps outside his apartment that Dale has a mortgage to pay. So for him, it made sense to come back in.
Yeah. Well, at first he was very reluctant. He said, "Fuck them." He says, "I'm out of here. I don't want anything to do with these people. They dropped me like a big stone there. Dropped me out. I'm gone. Don't want anything to do with them." And Emerson saying, "Well, they're going to put pressure on you, and because I can understand how you feel and all that, but kind of pretty much think about it, And I don't think it took Dale too long. Dale to think, I better go back in."
But Emerson mentioned as well. He mentioned as he was leaving, and it was a subtle threat. He said, "You've got a nice home here," something like that. So, because Emerson knows that he has a mortgage, and he has to pay off his mortgage, and Emerson knows, as you said, the company will cut him off, so he'll lose all his shares, everything, if he doesn't play ball. So that's the big stick. The big stick is that Dale will be made homeless, and he's got kids, he's got a wife. He'll be made homeless by the company. That's the stick. The carrot, the big juicy carrot, is come in, and you'll probably make about 1.5 or 2 million for 7 hours work, just sitting in an office chatting to a colleague.
Yeah. And there was a part then when the two guys, that was when Will and Seth went off looking for him, and they were driving back in the car, and they were thinking about what was just about to happen here, and Will basically said, "Well, this is the way it is, People want to live like this, in their cars and their big houses that they can't even pay for, so they need us, And the only reason they get to continue to live like kings is because we got our fingers on the scales in their favor. I take my hand off, then the whole world gets really fucking fair, really fucking quickly, and nobody actually wants that. They say they do, but they don't. They want what we have to give them, but they also want to, play innocent, pretend they have no idea where it came from. Well, that's more hypocrisy than I'm willing to swallow. So fuck them. Fuck normal people. The funny thing is, tomorrow, if all this goes tits up, they're going to crucify us for being too reckless. But if we're wrong and everything gets back on track, well, then the same people are going to laugh till they piss their pants, because we're going to all look like the biggest pussies God ever let through the door. And in a sense, he's kind of right. People do want the gadgets, don't they? They want the bling, but they need the bankers to kind of provide all this for them, That's the kind of the world that they live in, even though that's not necessarily true. But in this world that we're living in now, that's the way it works.
Well,
you're in a system. That's it.
Just think about it, right? There are people out there who will remortgage a house to go on a holiday.
Yeah.
Now,
stupidity.
It's incredible, and I'm very glad that you brought up that quote, because it does give another side to it. Now, yes, this is a rotten corporation. Yes, the top brass are scumbags. Yes, they're destroying people's lives, but this is where people need to be responsible for making decisions. The idea that you will take out a loan from a bank or a mortgage in the knowledge that they might up the interest rates at any time, that you could go into negative equity, the fact that you don't consider the future consequences for what you're going to do now.
Yeah.
And it's like, they say about how you find out if a child in the future will be smart or dumb. You say, can they avoid instant gratification to try and, get more in the future? So, for example, could they, if you say to them, I'll give you one cookie, or I'll give you one cookie tomorrow. Sorry, I'll give you I'll give you 5 cookies now, but if you wait till tomorrow, I'll give you 20 or something like that. Or it could be just, I'll give you 2 tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or you can have one now. That most will just only consider the now.
Yeah.
The future it doesn't matter, the future. And it's a sort of recklessness, and it's embedded in the education system. Like, when you go through the education system, there's nobody advising you, for example, to avoid usury, to avoid paying interest on things to these faceless corporations. The system is to become a debt slave. That's the education you get. Become a debt slave, consume, repeat, consume, repeat.
Yeah, and it's the thing about living in the now, right? I mean, that could be a good thing, but it's a good thing where you live in the now, but you make sure that's how it determines your future by seeing what's going on around you now, so you can have a good idea of what could happen in the future. So you keep your finger on the pulse, so to speak. But what happened with a lot of people, and I saw it particularly in Ireland, during the Celtic Tiger, so that big illusion that we had, that people just wanted everything. They wanted 2 houses, they wanted a holiday home, 3, 4 cars, the whole thing. And it was like, just get the money now, buy all this, and whatever happens, don't worry about the future, so to speak, right? No one thought of the consequences of all this, and a lot of them got very badly stung, Unfortunately, a lot of people who saw what the writing on the wall, including myself, I could see it, because I remember the banks were offering like 110% mortgages, and in other words, you didn't even have to put down a deposit. They give you 110%, so you're actually borrowing more than what the house is worth. I mean, crazy stuff. And so there was this a spell was cast over people back then, and a lot of them were just dumb enough to go along with it, and just to get on that property ladder. Now, I can understand why people want to get a home and all that, because that's where if you want to get married and have kids, you need a nice home to live in. I can understand all that, but it went way overboard, it went crazy, and I saw it, because go back into the 90s and the 80s, people had nothing. People barely had a pot to piss in, I remember, But what they did have is they did have a community, and they had people around them. So we were wealthy in one sense that we had that, but we were poor with regards to material stuff. But we had each other, and we always got on, and we survived. There was no homelessness back then. Look at it now.
No, and plus, BRIZER, back then there was no such thing as a 40-year mortgage. Most of the mortgages were like 10 years or maximum maybe 20.
20, I think. Yeah, then it went up to 25 and then 30, and it was nuts. So people didn't know what they were dealing with, and they just thought, this is free money, is just going to continue going. And people were warning about it in 2006, 2007, that it was overheating, and this was going to end badly, and it sure did. It sure did. So anyway, yeah, back to the movie again. So they did the big fire sale was successful, and the guy, the people were told, right, we're going to have to let go a lot of you, but you got, you achieved the target, so you're going to walk away with a nice big fat check that'll keep you going for quite a while, and you probably get a job somewhere else anyway, or whatever you want to do with it, So nobody was too unhappy about it. They all left. The people who left were happy because they got that nice big bonus. And the ones that have stayed, the Peter Sullivan guy, I believe he got promoted, you know. And I thought it was a very good scene there at the end then when John Tull is sitting in his big office, or it's a kind of a restaurant or something, probably a restaurant in the building, you know. And he's just for him, yeah. And
he's the only customer, yeah.
Got his meal there and his wine, and he's just eating away, and Sam Rogers comes in and he says, "Oh yeah, Sam, you know, sit down here and whatever." And that was great work, you know. Sam wasn't, you know, you could tell he wasn't happy, really. I mean, had to be done, I suppose. What John Tull said, I thought was really good. He says, "So you think we might have put a few people out of business today? That is all for naught. We've been doing that every day for almost 40 years, Sam. And if this is all for naught, then so is everything out there. It's just money. It's just made up." So true. Pieces of paper with pictures on it, so we don't have to kill each other just to get something to eat. It's not wrong, and it's certainly no different today than it's ever been. 1637, 1797, 1819, 1837, 57, 84, 1901, 1907, 1929, 1937, 74, 87, and then he goes, "Jesus, that fucked me up good." 92, 97, 2000, and whatever we want to call this. It's just the same thing over and over. We can't help ourselves. And you and I can't control it, or stop it, or even slow it, or even ever so slightly alter it. We just react, and we make a lot of money if we get it right. And we get left by the side of the road if we get it wrong. And there have always been, and there will always be, the same percentage of winners and losers. Happy foxes and sad sacks. Fat cats and starving dogs in this world. Yeah, there may be more of us today than there's ever been, but the percentages, they stay exactly the same. And I was going, wow, that's profound. And it's so true.
It's a very good speech. There's another one here as well, BRIZER. I think this is before it's early in the morning before the final showdown where they start selling off their crap. Told I think he's up on a desk or something, and he says, by the end, and you get this feeling of survival of the fittest. He says, "By the end of today, almost everyone else in the world, including me, will have considerably less money than they began the day with. You in this room are the exception. You will leave here today richer. You will fire the first shot. I wish it didn't have to be, but at times the market must eat its weak, and you all are not the weak. We must strike quick, with no doubt. If you hear pause on the line, attack. By noon, the SEC is going to be in here getting in your faces, sniffing around. You let us take care of them, and you just keep going. We own what we are choosing to sell today, and there is nothing they can do about it. 107 years ago, this firm was founded. Today, we secure our place for the next 107 years. You've got 2 minutes before we get started. Let's finish this so we can get on to the next one." And, you know, as you said, that's the boom and bust cycle. You know, they're used to this. They're used to this. And the trick is to come out the other end and continue doing what you're doing. So
yeah, that's it. Yeah. And I think then Sam just said at the end too, you know, like, why? I think he was asked like, why? Oh yeah, we want you. He felt like, oh, I'm giving in. I said, that's it. I'm done now. I want to retire. He says, no, I need you to stay for another 2 years, at least another 2 years, you know. And he was like, I don't know, fat enough. 34 years, 35 years, whatever. But then he changed his mind, and he says, well, why did you change your mind? He says, I need the money. There you go.
Yeah.
Just like the others, you know. Yeah.
Obviously, BRIZER.
Eric Dale and Sarah Robertson and all of it. And then Peter Sullivan gets to stay, and he gets promoted, and yeah, So nobody loses here, really. You know what I mean? In the corporation, you know, everyone wins here. Even the employees who are let go, they walk off with a big fat bonus. So everyone's happy. But then the ramifications of what they just did is going to hit home in the months and years to follow. You know.
Yeah.
But they don't care about that. You know.
Oh. This is where you have, you know, special needs teachers, etc., being taken out of schools. Mm-hmm. You have hospitals reducing staff, you know, because of these financial firms. You know.
Yeah.
As you say, the knock-on effect socially, it turns into a disaster.
Well, the financial expert Max Kaiser, his name. I used to watch him. He's pretty good. I mean, he called this acts of financial terrorism. He said, and I think he's correct. It was, you know. They literally went in there and destroyed the markets. Not only destroyed the markets, but destroyed humanity. Really, they threw a big bomb in there and really made a mess. And they got away with it. Most of them, you know.
We should move on to.
And then the end scene. The end scene then. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next scene we see him. I couldn't make out who it was because it was kind of dark, but some guy digging in the. Oh yeah. I think John says, well, you could be digging ditches or something, didn't he? Something like that. John Tultz said, better than digging ditches. And then the next scene is Sam Rogers digging a hole in a garden, like in front of a house, and you think, well, that's his head. Like, is he going to commit suicide here or what? I didn't know what was going to happen here. And the light comes on, and a woman comes out and says, oh, call the police, and whatever. It happens to be his ex-wife. Calls out to her and says, oh, it's me, and the dog died, you know. And then she comes out, and obviously, so he's just burying the dog, you know. And I'm not sure what to make of that scene. What do you make of that? Was it kind of just yeah, it's kind of like it was a nice kind of finale. I can see, like, they're just burying the dog, so it's the dog. It's all over. So it's kind of like we just go buy a new dog type of thing, isn't it? Or what? I don't know. What do you think?
I just thought that, you know, all the money in the world can't keep your loved ones alive. You know, exactly, just can't. Like, mortality is there. Mm-hmm. You know, all this rat race, all this scrimping and saving, and maybe getting one over on someone, fleecing them. Mm. You still have to confront mortality, and in his case, you know, his money, maybe it prolonged a little bit the life of the dog, but it was never going to make the dog.
No, I know you could imagine
forever.
$1,000 a day. Imagine the amount of medication, big pharma crap that was pumped into that poor dog.
Yeah,
killed the dog anyway, you know.
Yeah, and I think the dog had a tumor on its liver, and it's funny as well because she says, I phoned the police when she doesn't know who it is.
Yeah.
So that means the police are going to show up, and he's going to be burying a dog without a permit. So he's probably going to get arrested. You know, I'm sure he could. I'm sure he'd have enough money to pay off the.
Oh yeah.
Or I'm sure all he'd have to do is phone his boss, and his boss will phone the top brass at the police, and nothing will happen. You know, but it's. I thought it was a very good scene. It's a horrible burying a pet. You know, it's a horrible feeling.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And I think, in his case, I think he brought the carcass there because that's, you find out that he's no longer with his wife because she tells him you don't live here anymore.
That's right. Yeah.
And in his head, but that's where the dog spent most of its life. So you know, I kind of have to bury the dog here. Yeah, and it just shows you that he doesn't really have much left in his life because it seemed that he's obviously divorced from his wife.
His best friend is his dog now.
Exactly, you know? And the dog's no longer around.
And he's got loads of money, which he doesn't know what to do with, really.
Yeah, and he hates his job. He hates his job, but because he's been so frivolous with his money, I'm sure he threw it out like confetti, like keeping the dog alive on a grand a day. He told, as you said, he told his boss, "I need the money." So he's going to stay on working for a guy he hates in a job he hates because he can't hold on to money. He can't save money, and he's a slave to money.
That's it.
So, but as well as that, BRIZER, what I really liked about the end, and I don't think I mentioned at the start of this recording that the director is a guy called J.C. Chander. I think he also wrote the script. And as far as I know, this was his debut film. And I just thought it was a marvelous film overall. But at the very end, it fades out and the credits start rolling up the screen. But you can still hear the shovel rasping against the soil. And it goes on forever, you know, just him digging this hole. And I'm sure there are a lot of ways we could look at it. We could look at all sorts.
He's digging a hole for himself and the dog.
Exactly. He's a walking dead man, you know. So anyway, BRIZER, we'll wrap it up.
I'll just say I enjoyed it. It was a good film. Very good analysis of what's kind of happened back in those terrible days, you know, and what these corporations and banksters and everything got up to, you know. Now, again, we talked about the stupidity of people like buying into this whole thing. So there's a lot of responsibility on the part of ourselves in many ways, because we enjoyed those good times when they were there. And then, when the bad times happened, we were like, oh, this shouldn't happen to me. But, at the end of the day, this was fraud, absolute, complete fraud, which is a crime, And those companies should not be allowed to be around, And I think what we're going to see, we're seeing it now with the way, when you look at what our countries are doing, but especially with regards to the migrants coming in and the amount of money they're spending on them. Like, I found out that the hotel in the town here, where they're housing about 70 men, young men, they made a 2.2 million profit. That was on government handouts, remember? That was the government paying them that. So we got these property owners, hotel owners and whatever, who are making out like bandits on this as well, to destroy our countries, That really saddens me. That's a kick in the guts, isn't it, when you think about it?
Absolutely.
And it always comes down to that, isn't it? It always comes down to that dollar or euro or pound or whatever you want to call it, right? That it always comes down to that, and that's where they have us by the balls, basically. And people need to kind of rethink their whole attitude to what actually money is. It's only a form of exchange at the end of the day. That's all it is. That's what it's always meant to be, whether it's paper or gold or silver or whatever. It's a form of exchange. To buy goods, you give something back in exchange, And it's just gone into a completely, it's taken on a whole new identity, It's turned into a monster, basically, and it's devouring pretty much all of us, even all these top people in these corporations, Because everyone's going to be affected by this, and as I say, eventually everyone's going to die anyway, and you can't take it with you. So, what was this all about? Is that what life is all about? Chasing the freaking dollar, Come on,
I was in a bar there at midday today, and I had a coffee, and then I had a pint of beer after that. And while I was there, I could see lots of customers coming, and a lot of them were, I would say, elderly enough, and they were buying, maybe a glass of wine or a cup of coffee, and they were paying for, I'd say 50% of them or 60% of them were paying for it with the bank card or with the phone.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, this is a small bar. It's not a franchise. And I just couldn't understand why. Obviously, I know it's convenience and it's a force of habit and all that. But the idea that you're in a small bar, it's family run, a small enterprise, and someone wants a cup of coffee and they have to bring the bank in on the transaction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they do, yeah.
A simple cup of coffee, a cheap cup of coffee, but the bank has to be part of the transaction.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I find that despicable and a bit scary as well. A bit
scary. It is, because it's going to lead to the whole CBDCs and all that, you know, and it looks like that's where we're heading. So it's all about keeping cash alive and using it, even though they're only pieces of paper, right? Which, you know, I believe in Zimbabwe and in Argentina, where they had massive hyperinflation, they were using it for toilet paper, because the notes, in Venezuela as well, because they're worthless, you know. But cash, as it stands now, it still has value. Use it, because, you know, digital currency, well, that's it, isn't it? Really, you know, it's total control then. So
yeah.
And that's, I think, where they're going now. I think that's where they're going now, because they know they can't keep this Ponzi scheme going. Like, so they now have to move into this, and into the whole green economy as well, right? To the Green New Deal, where they're just, again, they're rearranging the deck chairs and just kind of, we'll you know, and the whole COVID thing was that all started this off, you know.
Yeah, they don't want you, BRIZER. They don't want you accumulating any wealth whatsoever.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the idea now that banks, I know where I am, they charge you for using a bank account. It used to be that you got a bit of interest on your deposit. Now they charge you every month for using the bank. So it's the idea that you trying to save up money for something. The government, the banks, they don't want that. They don't want someone saving money, trying to plan for their future. They want you, and even with that social credit system, the idea was that you get a certain amount of credits, or whatever they call it, money, every month. And if you didn't spend it, it just disappeared at the end of the month anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
So the idea, they don't want the plebs trying to improve their station in life and, you know, trying to plan for the future. They don't want that. BRIZER, we'll finish up. What would you give this film? What would you give this film?
Out of 10, I'd give it a 7. You know, maybe higher, but I definitely give it a 7. I think it's definitely well worth a watch if you're interested in that type of thing, you know, because it's kind of, it's not an action-packed drama or action-packed movie there or anything, you know. It's kind of slow moving, but there's a very good storyline to it, and it pulls you in, and you kind of get a very good understanding of what was going on, as I said, back in 2008, you know. And so I thought the acting was very good, and it's a good storyline, and you know, kind of good message at the end of it. Like, this is the world we're living in, and we have to, for us who are awakened by what's going on, and you know, it's up to us to kind of try and tell people what's happening, and we got to change our ways, basically, if we want to survive. You know, that's it, because they're coming at us from all angles now, whether it's mass migration, it'll be through the economy, it'll be through this climate change nonsense. They're coming at us from all angles, and we need to find a way through it. I'm not sure if we can beat this system, but I think we can find a way around it. And I think right now, I think it's a matter of survival for us to maybe get through the other side somehow. So put yourself in that position of your man John Tult. You know, we're in a precarious situation here. We've got to pull out all the stops here. I think that's what we need to be doing now, and understand what's going on around us, and figure around, you know, try and withdraw ourselves away from this poisonous system as much as we can. We're still over reliant on it, but pull yourself away gradually and just be your own self and just get through this thing that we call life, whatever, you know, whatever. And I think that's probably the key. That's the challenge that's been put down for us, whether it's by God, Creator, whatever you want to call it. That's the challenge for us, and I think we can do it. I mean, I'm doing pretty well. I mean, I'm not too concerned about what's happening. I don't like what's happening, but it's not really affecting me, because I know, or it's not affecting me too much, because I kind of know what's going on, and so I can deal with it one day at a time, type of thing. You know, we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years' time or what. We haven't a clue. I don't know if we'll be even around. I don't know. But we have to still keep going, you know, and that's it. That's the end. That's my summation of it all.
Yeah, you can make a difference in your immediate environment. You know, you can
make a difference. Yeah,
you can network. You can improve things for people. You know, you can collaborate. You can get them to improve things for you as well. You can do things in your immediate environment. These things, you know, about, I don't know, Putin, Ukraine, and Gaza, and
I know.
Although they're terrible things, and it's horrible what's happening. Just remember, you can make a difference in your, you know, in your region or in your village, your town, wherever you are.
Lead by example.
Exactly.
Don't be a leader. There's too many people trying to be leaders. Just lead by example, and you'll find that people who are figuring stuff out will be drawn towards you because they like what you're saying or what you're doing, you know. And
I'll just say, BRIZER, before we go, that, you know, the fact that the budget for this film, as I mentioned at the very start, was $3.5 million, and then you look at the lineup in the cast, I get the feeling this was the time of the, you know, would have been around the time of the Wall Street protests and we are the 99%.
2011, was it 2011? Was
yeah. So it was in the middle of that. It was in the middle of that. They would have started, I suppose, filming maybe end of 2010 or whatever. But to have that lineup, Kevin Spacey, Jeremy Irons.
Yeah, he's a big name now, you know. And
he's
a bit of a dodgy character too, so I heard.
Oh, very, very much so, very much so. But to have that lineup, especially back then, that tells me that this was a political project, that there were people in Hollywood who were not happy with what what Wall Street was doing, because to make a film with
you need big bucks,
a stellar cast, and to have such a small budget, that tells me there must have been some sort of volunteer aspect to it as well.
Yeah, I think The Big Short was like that too. There are a lot of big names in that one as well, and I think the budget on that one was pretty small. But they didn't get the traction. These films weren't advertised out there, so nobody really went to see them. But I think a lot of people should watch them and get a good idea what actually really happened here. You know, it's
absolutely
fraud on a gigantic scale. I mean, absolutely gigantic.
Yeah.
And these fuckers got away with it. Like, you know, that's galling in itself. You know.
Just think of a burglar climbing in the window of a house, right? And now imagine, 100 million burglars, going in the windows of 100 million houses, and you'll get a sense of that won't even line up to the scale of what happened. But theft is theft, and they were saying people.
You talk about people are kind of stupid. Imagine robbing a poor old woman who didn't know what was going on, right? I mean, that's just immoral. That's just wrong.
A blind woman as well.
Blind woman, and and that's what they kind of did. They knew that people were gullible, and they worked on it, and they knew they'd get away with it. So there's a bit of personal responsibility on people that should have known better, but unfortunately we all fell for it. It's a case of learning from our mistakes and saying we're not going to fall for that crap again.
Yeah.
But will people do that? That's the thing.
Yeah. That's it. Will they learn? Will they learn?
A
lot of them didn't learn from the last few years, and it's been disappointing seeing that. But that's just the way it is.
I've seen a kind of a waking up process, whether it's slow, I don't know. I mean, it's there, right? People are waking up to the whole COVID scam now and other things. So there's a bit of a pushback now, which is at long last we've seen something, because it was looking pretty grim there for a while. But I suppose for every action there's a reaction, and it comes to people's doors. People now then start doing something, and that's what the COVID thing did. It brought all this stuff to people's doors, where you weren't allowed out, and there was literally forcing you, not forcing you, but coercing you to get a jab that God knows what was in it, For what? For a nothing burger, really, when you think about it. I mean, I don't believe it even existed, but that's another story. But the whole thing was a big scam from start to finish, and it was the move that they made. These John Tull characters made to move to the next stage, And it's working so far, but we'll see where it goes. You know, I'll say to people, just got to stay strong, be alert, and look after yourselves and your families and your friends. You know, people are close to you. That's it.
And I'll say to people who are listening to this, make sure you hit the like, share this around, because I think it's been a good conversation. It's been almost 2 hours of our time. And I'd also recommend you follow BRIZER on Twitter. So I'll put a link for his Twitter, etc., in the description. BRIZER, thank you very much for coming on. And
no problem.
This has been a good one. Thank you.
It's been a good one. Yeah, I enjoyed this one. It was good because this is kind of up my street a bit, because I know about this stuff a bit, you know. So it's good to talk about it. I enjoyed that movie, and I would recommend it to people. Go watch it. It's good.